So we have a lot of work ahead of us. There are a lot of troubling signs coming along the way. There are a lot of storm clouds that are gathering, and I'm concerned about it a lot. For the past 2 years, the Trudeau Liberals have been pursuing policies that put our future at grave risk. They're spending everything today, leaving future generations to pay far higher taxes. The Nonpartisan Parliamentary Budget Office released their latest report on Canada's finances at the end of October. And the report shows that the federal budget won't be balanced by the end of this Liberal mandate like they promised. Deficits will continue into the foreseeable future. And that is a choice by the Liberal government. They do not need to spend more than they take in. There's no compelling reason for it, like a recession or a war, but they have chosen to do so. And these storm clouds are gathering more and more. I don't believe that any of the positive signs that have been happening in the economy are thanks to anything the Liberals have been doing. I think it's thanks to the hard work of Canadians all across the country, and it's happening despite the policies of the federal Liberal government. Promised funding for infrastructure has been slow to move, and all of the new tax hikes on businesses and individuals won't help. And with the threat of interest rates going up, Canadians will pay more on the record amount of debt that they already owe, and so will the government. These tax hikes are a consequence of Justin Trudeau's decision to spend. We all know as conservatives that if you borrow money, you have to pay it back somehow, someday. Tax hikes like the payroll taxes going up, national carbon taxes being imposed on every province, tax-free savings accounts being slashed, and many popular tax credits being eliminated. They even wanted to tax employee discounts and Canadians with diabetes. And that's something that our Conservative caucus in the House of Commons, we worked so hard. Every other week, it seemed, they had a new proposal to either eliminate a tax credit that was helping some of Canada's most vulnerable, or finding a new way to impose a tax on Canadians. I remember when they threatened to tax employee discounts. I didn't know this. When I was a waiter, I didn't realize that every time I got a 50% discount on my meal that I was somehow cheating on my taxes by not claiming that. And we've had to force it to walk them back on so many of those. And it just shows the mean-spirited approach that the finance department has when it comes to the money that Canadians earn after working so hard. Justin Trudeau said they wanted to help the middle class, but their policies do the opposite. The Fraser Institute has shown that 81% of middle-income families pay higher taxes today, with the average increase at around $840 per year. Now, there's nothing compassionate about this. Trudeau said the wealthy would pay more and the middle class would get a break. It certainly hasn't worked out that way at all. The entire time that they were going after small businesses, they used very divisive and very inflammatory rhetoric. They accused many hardworking business owners as just trying to avoid paying higher taxes. They said that many of these types of arrangements were not about creating jobs. They were just fancy accounting schemes to lower tax burdens. And they persecuted and made life difficult, and continue to that for the mechanics, the shop owners, the interior designers, the plumbers, the people who put up a shingle and try to support their families. But they weren't entirely wrong about everything. You know, it does turn out that Justin Trudeau was right about something. There were some people who were using fancy accounting schemes and special types of arrangements. It just turns out that if Justin Trudeau and Bill Morneau wanted to find those people, all they had to do was turn slightly towards each other, gaze into each other's eyes, and they could have left the rest of the hardworking Canadians in this country who just believe in their communities and want to leave something better for their families alone for the past 6 months. It's not just domestically here at home. There are external threats that concern me as well. Now, negotiations are still underway for the future of NAFTA. There's a lot of reasons to be concerned, a lot of signs that they're not going as well as they could be. Now, I announced earlier this week that I will be taking a delegation of Conservative members of Parliament down to Washington with me to speak with a united voice. I do believe it's very important that when opposition parties go down to Washington, that we all bring the Canadian flag down with us and fight for the common good for our economy. That is really a non-partisan issue. So we will be doing that. But here at home, we will be holding this Liberal government to account as to whether or not they've been taking this as seriously as they should have been, as early as they should have been. Take, for example, softwood lumber. It's an issue that's very important to the Canadian economy. And when President Obama was still in the White House, there was a possibility to get a deal before the new administration came in. And when Justin Trudeau went down to Washington for that very celebrated, much hyped state dinner, he didn't take his Minister of Natural Resources down with him. He took his in-laws and the chief party fundraiser for the Liberal Party, but he didn't take down some of the most senior ministers who may have been able to get the ball over the finish line on that very important issue. Justin Trudeau doesn't seem to have a plan. The United States is making very serious demands of Canada, and these protectionist demands threaten our auto sector, for example, and much of our supply chain in many different types of manufacturing sectors. He's put forward a small number of priorities in comparison to the United States putting forward over 100 demands at the table, so that we know that the collapse of NAFTA will be devastating for Canadian workers, for businesses, and the families that depend on them. And I don't know that Justin Trudeau is prepared to this. As he faces the threat of failure in these talks, the reason why I'm not all that optimistic is because of what happened at other trade negotiations just recently. For the Trans-Pacific Partnership, our Prime Minister, in the very final hours, completely no-showed the final signing portion of those talks. Just no-showed it. He's managed to anger some of our closest allies and friends. I mean, how do you get, as Prime Minister of Canada, how do you get Japan and Australia mad at you? Only Justin Trudeau could have figured that out. He went to China. He went to China with great expectations. You know, this was going to be a new era for trade, taking Canada down a road that many of us have concerns about. But he couldn't even do that. In fact, he couldn't even negotiate the photo op with the Chinese government, never mind the talks. And this is the guy that's sitting down at the table with Donald Trump. So we have a lot of concerns on our side about the ability for Justin Trudeau to actually protect a deal. Of course, there's all kinds of stuff that we have great concern. Peter Kent is he's our shadow. Recently he's been one of the more busier shadow ministers in our guys. He is the shadow minister for ethics. And I should just maybe proactively disclose this to you, Peter. Recently, I too flew into an island airport. It was Billy Bishop. It wasn't anything in the Caribbean, so I think that's okay. But I just want to flag that with you, because I don't believe that getting caught by the ethics commissioner breaking federal ethics law is something to celebrate. And the Prime Minister's answers recently at the town hall, where he seemed to say that this is a wonderful sign that our system works. I'm no lawyer. But if someone ever pled that in a court of law, I don't know what the judge would say to that.